Oh, welcome back again. Today we are on part 2 of our project diary for Morbag the Goblin from Blacksmith Miniatures. And today we're going to have a little look. Inspiration and ideas. If you missed the first part, you can still go and check it out, which was the intro. But for today we're going to have a little look. Inspiration, ideas, and we'll start off with Morbag himself. Right, so here's our cheeky little chappy. And when we look at inspiration and ideas for creating a full piece, the first thing to start with, well, for me in which case, is the actual miniature itself. So if we look at Morbag, we can tell immediately he's covered in leaves for his clothing. He's got acorns, a little bone in his hair, leather straps, a hornet and a stick for a weapon. So obviously this is not going to be a sci-fi mini. For this, we're going to look more into the world of fantasy. That's our first kind of stop, thinking about what sort of plinth we're going to create for him. Secondly, with all the leaves and the foliage, I'm thinking more woodland, out in the moors maybe, rocky outcrops, something like that. So already we're getting an idea of the setting which we want to put Morbag into. For me, the plinths and the bases are they're not just a frame, but they're a context to the start of a narrative that the miniature is centered to. So a few ideas already just by looking at the miniature. So next is to kind of refine and see what we can find for our actual setting and how we're going to present it. So let's have a little goosey at some different bits of inspiration. Now, for me, I usually start by just looking at some inspiration from real life. For example, something like I mentioned, a rocky outcrop. So I have this nice rocky outcrop. We've got grasses and flowers growing and around it. Something like that, maybe? It'd be kind of nice to have Morbag standing up on top of, ready to jump down. Again, Google is your friend here. Google Image is your friend, as is Pinterest. You can just go and find so many different pictures and ideas from a simple search. Again, nice big rocky outcrop. So already I'm leaning on elevating Morbag up because he is a little fella. So I want to elevate him up. Again, having kind of ideas of big rocks, which have then got grasses, heathers growing in around them. And again, this is all just quick Google searches. Again, now looking at rocky outcrops, and seeing lichens growing on them, some grasses growing in between them. So already I'm kind of forming an idea in my head of what I want to try and create. Again, just looking at more kind of ideas and all these things. Maybe you have a little tree in it, to give it a little bit of a more covering frame with Morbag below it. It's also good to look at see what kind of products you can get. So for example, here's one I came up from Debris of War. These are resin outcrops you can find. I'm not going to buy these, but it's nice to kind of see something more of the scale. So something like this you can buy ready-made, or very, very easily, and it's what we are going to do, is just make your own. Another bit of inspiration is to look at the work of other artists. For example, Fabrizio Russo, this Nurgle, Lord of Plagues, I think he was. Again, if we look at the base here, we're starting to see that it's not just having the miniature flat on the base. We want to rise it up. So what Fabrizio has done here, he's brought it up in levels. Okay, so we've got steps up. We've got these lovely bits of root hanging around it. And this is a very, very simple base. It's a really simple base, but it's really, really effective. So looking at the work of other artists, not to copy them, but simply to be inspired by them, to get ideas from them. If we look on, a really nice base by MaGie Miniature Painting. But again, have a look how we can see that it's not flat to the plinth, but it's being brought up in levels. So we're stepping up to the miniature. So again, this is a lovely, simple base. It's not overcomplicated. It's not over-exaggerated. It's rocky steps with some grasses and some heather ferns growing in amongst it. And that gives us further ideas. From Meandering Shade, this tree plinth. I think eventually there was another Nurgle Lord of Plagues put onto this. But here's another idea. And again, how the roots of the tree lead you up through the plinth to where the miniature will be. Now that tree is maybe a little low for Morbag, because I remember Morbag does have that tall stick which he's holding up to twat somebody with. So maybe a tree would something a little different. But again, have a look how your eyes are led through the plinth into the area where the character will be. And again, lovely little rocky outcrop, roots growing, really, really nice plinth. And finally, from Kevin Canner, this is a black orc he did. But again, we can notice how you're brought up through the frame. You're brought up through to the final figure. And having this kind of stepping is so much more effective than just having it flat on top of a base. So maybe this is something we want to look at or think about. And again, having all these nice little accent plants. We've got ferns, we've got leaves growing out, some moss, some grasses, and all these lovely rich colors. So maybe that's something we'd like to include in our final design. So for point of interest, when I'm planning, I also then sometimes, as I've said before, I'm not the best planner, but sometimes I do like to try and sketch something out. So let's have a little quick pull out of the old sketchbook and see if we can put down a couple of ideas. Okay, and there comes the sketchbook. Let's see, nice blank page. Now, when you're doing sketches and plans and ideas, they don't have to be perfect. You're not looking for an absolute masterpiece. This is not the finished product. This is not the finished piece that you're going to be building. But I find it's kind of easy just to sketch down really, really simple ideas. So we have our plinth. And again, this is just going to be a framework, which when we come to materials, which we'll be looking at in the next video, we can then see what do we have to build from. So we have our plinth. There was some ruts in the plinth because it's from an old piece of oak burr, I think it is. So very, very simply. Now, as I said, I want to build up. I don't want to have him flat on the plinth here. I want to have him higher up. So your eyes are going to be led up through, and then you've got him on top as if he's getting ready to jump down on somebody. So our first thing is we thought of like different layers, so it's kind of stepping up. Okay, so we put in, right, okay, we're not going to have it flat to the plinth. We're going to have maybe a small stone at the bottom, and then we can kind of go to some bigger and like a nice big, those nice rocky outcrops I saw. So let's just sketch in a nice big rock. It'll be on, and again, I want to have different layers. So I think about, right, having different bits of stone and then some area where I can have grasses. We'll have some nice grasses, maybe some flowers coming out from in underneath the rocky outcrop. Right there. Smaller stones keeping it up. Maybe even, might even have some mushrooms. Bloody hate mushrooms, but they do look nice on a plinth. And again, we want to make sure that our rock at the top is going to be fairly flat. Pull the miniature. Okay. Now, and again, bring the rock down. We can have more grasses filling in different areas, and maybe even having some plants coming out and hanging over. There's nothing wrong with something hanging over the edge of the plinth. Remember, this is not meant for gaming. This is going to be for display. Back to the trees. It's possible we could have a little wind-blown blackthorn or hawthorn tree up here. That will then give us a nice opportunity, like we saw in one of the plinths, the whole idea of having the roots coming down and clinging to the rocks as well, as they do. And those roots also serve to bring the eye up through the plinth to the eventual figure, which will be, I'm even going to try and draw Morbag. which will be basically up here. We'll have to make our tree as high because of that stick that he's carrying. So the tree, we might even need to cut the tree short so it's not overhanging him that way. But again, the excuse so we can bring in those roots, and again, more grasses on top. So immediately we have a simple working plan of what we're going to build. Next thing we need to look at is going to be our materials. What are we going to build this from? We could go out and try and get some rocks. That would be a grand idea. Could be done. Problem is, rocks are a real pain in the arse to drill into. Even with HSS drill bits, they're really not easy to drill into. So it's hard to pin the miniature to it. They're also heavy and harder to stick. So what are we going to use instead of rocks? Well, that is what we'll be looking at on the next video. Our Project Diary number 3 will be all about materials. If you've enjoyed this video series so far, please do all the subby, scribey, dingy dong bell thing. Do give a like, and I'll see you for the next one. Cheers, everyone.